While on Waluigi's end, we find that apparently Waluigi started to think that maybe this wasn't such a good idea to blame Wario for everything. But he does believe that he does owe him an apology. So, he got up that morning, went out, and tried to find him. But when he went to his house, he was not there. Apparently, somebody else already bought the house, and he doesn't know why, but why? So he looked everywhere for Wario. He pretty much looked all over the city, he even looked in his own house, and he even looked in his own car, which really wasn't a great idea, but he really didn't know what to do. He was panicking, he couldn't find Wario, and he was scared about him. What could have happened to him? Somebody could have kidnapped him? Could he have been lost? Stranded? Who knows? But the thing is, though, Waluigi didn't know what to do in this situation. He was thinking maybe it could have been Bowser. Maybe Bowser and his brother could have kidnapped him. The truth is, though, Bowser doesn't really seem to be very interested in kidnapping Wario. Usually, Bowser's main goal is to get Peach or Mario's children, or even Luigi's child as well. But even then, it was still not clear what happened. However, he did think that maybe it could be possible that the older enemies of Wario could have done it, possibly Captain Syrup or maybe some other villains as well. But even then, he wasn't sure because most of those people were actually gone, and some of them were even defeated for good, so he didn't really understand what could have happened. But he assumed that maybe Wario ran away, and there was nothing he could do. So that's when he thought that maybe he just needs to forget about this and just simply wait until Wario comes back. But meanwhile, though, he eventually meets his other brother, Walima. Walima is basically Waluigi's brother, who is addicted to soda and is into a lot of expensive things. Waluigi does eventually meet Walima in a valley, which of course, he actually doesn't like Walima and his addiction, but he thinks maybe Walima could replace Wario. But it turns out in the long run, this isn't such a good idea. At least financially and physically. On Wario's end, he's having a slightly better time. He arrives at Germany finally. But the only problem is he made a big mistake. And that mistake was, well, he didn't really get to actually look around online to see what Germany was like. It was much bigger than he thought. He didn't realize how big it was. He thought it was so much smaller than he remembered. But it turns out, from his point of view, Germany was almost like a city. He just simply got out of the train and now he's just completely lost. But he did eventually find a chocolate store, which he did remember going to as a kid. And the owner luckily knew him. Since Wario wasn't very fluent with the language over there, the owner was definitely fluent with English, so he was able to speak with him. Of course though, Wario purchased some chocolate and indulged himself by eating it. Of course, he kept doing this every single week. That was until the owner actually found out about his crazy habit of eating chocolate and ended up banning him. From Wario's point of view, this could have been worse. He possibly could have been sued or even put into jail just for causing a disturbance. And in Wario's case, the only reason he was banned was because he was completely addicted going there and eating. So really, Wario didn't know what to do at this point, as if stress eating wasn't already a thing he tried already. But he thought maybe he couldn't just simply eat his way out, so maybe he has to talk to someone, and that someone would be his parents. And obviously, we would look up to our parental figures to be able to talk to us, and be able to listen to us, and listen to what we have to say. But on Wario's end, this is much worse for him, because he doesn't have a very good relationship with his parents. Because for one, when he was a young child, his father ended up passing away from a very bad and fatal accident, which was caused from a car crash. And his mother, unfortunately, didn't have a very good relationship with him, mainly because of how disgusting he is and how addicted he is to a lot of garlic and riches. So really, he had to make this work. He wanted to simply go there to his mother's house and try to make a good impression that clearly he's not going to act like a little child and he needs to be more responsible with how he approaches. So, he decides to go there and try to see if he can make things work. But when he does go to his mother's house, things don't really seem to go the way he planned. Once he gets in there, he immediately tries to feel all mature and try to act responsible with how he enters. But of course, no matter what he did or what he thought, his mother still didn't have a very good relationship with him and when she first saw him, she was surprised to see him there. But it isn't until a few seconds later she starts making rants about him, about how he's crazy and absurdly disgusting when he eats his garlic and is obsessed with gold. So, while this didn't really faze Wario, it was still pretty scary about the fact that his mother was scolding him, so he left. Things were not going too well for Wario, as clearly he really should have thought things over. As while going to Germany may have seemed like a good idea at first, at least on paper, in reality, this wasn't the way he thought it would go. He thought it would be much more majestic, like he didn't think that it would be this bad. But it isn't until he had the realization in his mind he didn't want to be here anymore. He wanted to go home to Waluigi. He didn't want to be in Germany anymore. He didn't want to be here. He didn't want to come here just to get banned from a chocolate store, get scolded by his mother, and remember all these bad thoughts. He just wanted to leave. But the problem was he couldn't. He actually booked his ticket to be set for him to leave a year later. Or 2 years later, actually. But even then, he still didn't want to be there. He wanted to leave right away. But things started to get worse for him, as eventually he found out he actually couldn't afford his apartment because he actually got the first class room and not a regular room. So he ended up having to move out and could only afford about 3 to 4 nights there. He did eventually find another apartment to stay in, but even then, that apartment wasn't any better, because even though it was slightly cheaper, he still knew that he wouldn't be able to last there, and he still knew that he truly didn't want to be there. But the real thing was that this was what I meant. At some point, even though running away from his problems was what thought to be a good idea, truth was, it was a terrible idea, and it only made matters worse for him financially, and in terms of his family's relationship and much more. So really, he really shouldn't have ran away, and he should have stayed home while he had the chance. While Waluigi thinks he's having a better time than Wario, he's not. Walima has been doing all these weird things and asking for soda. And the worst part is, Walima wants all these expensive items, including Gucci, Apple, and all kinds of other things. And Waluigi, while he thought he couldn't afford them, it turns out he can. But he can't just simply spend all that money on Walima, as clearly he's a working man, and he needs to use that money for his bills and everything. And he knew Walima couldn't be trusted anywhere with his financial information or anything. So he had to hide all his credit card numbers, his bank accounts, and everything. But the thing was that even though Walima was like that back then, he's much older, and he knew better than that. Clearly, Waluigi couldn't trust him. But that wasn't the only thing that he had to worry about. Because later on, Walima actually almost went as far as almost getting kicked out by actually angering a building manager.
Suck a Cybertruck, Wayne.
And of course, while Waluigi was not happy with Walima and what he did try to fix this, which he did, but they eventually still got kicked out. So Waluigi had to move on to one more thing, and that was that he needed to get help, outside help. So he talked to Luigi. Luigi did make a deal with him and struck up that if he was going to live in Mario and Luigi's house, then he would have to make a deal with him. And that was that if he lived there, he would have to babysit both Yellow Toad and Blue Toad. Of course, Waluigi thought about this and realized that it was better he had a roof over his head than a cardboard box over his head. So, he decided to take the deal and simply stay there while also having to babysit the 2 children, which he wasn't very fond with the idea, but he thought it was better than nothing. So, they went ahead and did that. But then, it was that same night that Waluigi realized he didn't want Walima, and he actually wanted to be with Wario. He didn't want to be with Walima anymore. He didn't want to live like this. He wanted to live with Wario and see him gobble down garlic and talk about riches and everything. But it's too late. Wario has left, and Waluigi has been super depressed about it. Both Wario brothers have been suffering the worst on both ends, and it turns out both of them miss each other and want to be together once again, and Wario just wants to go home. But unfortunately, it's already too late for both of them. They've already made their decision, and it's already gone by too fast. And it was all because of a request that was denied that they both got separated. It was all because of one Nintendo employee that simply said no to Waluigi's request, that these two are now separate and are now suffering the worst of it on both ends of the problem. Two years have passed, and Wario is finally returning home after 2 years. And because of this, he was super excited. So he called Walima hoping that he still had a phone. Walima obviously still had his phone because it was Apple. He didn't want to lose it. So Wario told him about the big news, and then Walima actually left right before Wario could even finish his sentence. So Walima tells Waluigi. Waluigi actually scoffs at him at first, thinking it was a joke. But then he realized that it actually was true. But he called Wario to see if it was true. And yes, it was true. Wario was indeed coming home. And he was super excited about it, while Waluigi was even more excited about it. While they both were actually super excited to finally see each other again, Wario comes back home once again, and Waluigi sees him. But of course, when Waluigi first saw him come, it turns out that apparently he was not super happy with it. But of course, when Wario explained himself, Waluigi realized what happened. And he accepted the fact that he just had to be happy with the fact that Wario came back. So, he accepted it. But it turns out that apparently Wario never realized that Waluigi actually got kicked out of his apartment. But he just thought that simply he thought to actually move in with the Mario Brothers, as they were more popular. So, he tried to make himself a little more helpful, finding out that apparently Waluigi made a deal with Luigi to take care of his two children. Or at least Mario and Luigi's children. So, Wario actually decides that maybe he needs to make himself more useful. But it turns out not everyone really needs his help. But then, something struck him. It turns out that when Mario was actually trying to put Blitzo to sleep, Wario realized that he was having some trouble, so Wario thought maybe he could sing to him, like sing to sleep. He's seen this with little children, but he never realized that apparently this was a 6-year-old. But, of course, he still tried. But he sang the pause music for one of his games, which was Wario World. Not such a good idea, as it's a pretty annoying song. Mario knew this and actually stopped him in the act, but it turned out it worked. So Mario actually decided that maybe it was best if Wario stayed since he was so helpful with it. And Wario was happy about this, after realizing that he just tried to do everything to help everyone. But it turns out though, everything turned out great in the end. So what exactly happened afterwards? Well, not much. Wario was already back to his old ways and talking about riches and eating garlic. Later on, he actually turned out to do a lot more. As if we look at Bowser's Revenge, he actually became a little more useful. Not only did he become a victim and actually get controlled, but he was able to help out his brother a little more. And he became a lot more useful to the family. Of course, Wario never really did much and just continued on. He was much happier than he ever has before. And because of a recent Nintendo Direct that also said that he was getting a new WarioWare game, he was even happier than he ever has been. And so was Waluigi, especially knowing he was going to be in another golf game. So thank you guys for watching this video. Also, if you guys want to see more videos like this, like a documentary about the characters, just leave a comment down below of what character you want to see, and I will do a video of that ASAP. Thank you guys for watching, hopefully you enjoyed, and I will see you guys next time. Stay super. Bye.